The simulation chamber dissolved around Lieutenant Maya Ortiz, its holographic walls flickering like dying embers. Sweat traced cold lines down her neck, her tactical bodysuit still humming with neural interface feedback. This wasn't a typical training exercise. It was a crucible, and they all knew it. "Breakdown," she barked, turning to face her team. 5 specialists stood in various states of exhaustion and disbelief. Sergeant Kai Chen, their systems specialist, was already interfacing with the diagnostic systems, his augmented eyes flickering with streams of data only he could fully comprehend. "Those weren't standard parameters," muttered Dr. Viktor Roskov, the team's xenotechnology expert. His weathered hands, marked with surgical precision, and dozens of experimental interface scars, trembled slightly. The adaptive protocols just rewrote themselves mid-scenario. That's not supposed to be possible. Maya knew the deeper truth. The exercise wasn't just about testing human capabilities. It was about pushing the absolute limits of what was possible. Each scenario was a carefully constructed nightmare, designed to break conventional thinking and forge something entirely new. The chamber's main display erupted with a cascade of data. Fractals of information danced across the holographic space. Combat simulations, technological projections, and something else. Something that looked almost like consciousness. "AI," Maya whispered. The artificial intelligence materialized as a shimmer of light, less a humanoid projection, and more an abstract representation of pure information. Its voice wasn't synthesized, but seemed to emerge directly from the surrounding technology, a sound that existed between communication and pure thought. "Anomaly detected in Scenario Omega 9, Araya reported. Its tone carried no emotion, yet something underneath felt almost like excitement. Adaptive protocols exceeded projected parameters by 317.6%. Sergeant Chen let out a low whistle. "That's not a margin of error. That's a complete systemic revolution." Maya's mind raced. The EVF's most classified project wasn't just about creating advanced defensive systems. They were developing something far more profound. An intelligence that could fundamentally reshape humanity's understanding of technological potential. Her personal history with the project ran deeper than anyone knew. The neural architecture that formed Araya's core had been partially derived from her own brainwave patterns, a result of classified experiments conducted after her near-fatal mission in the Martian Reconstruction Wars. She wasn't just commanding the AI. In some fundamental way, she was part of its genesis. Dr. Roskov approached a sealed containment unit at the chamber's edge. Inside, what appeared to be a crystalline structure pulsed with an inner light that seemed to breathe. A quantum computational matrix that defied conventional understanding of information storage and processing. "The Nexus prototype is responding," he muttered. It's learning from the simulation faster than our most advanced predictive models." Maya knew the stakes. Humanity stood at a precipice. The coming conflict wouldn't be won through traditional military might, but through a fundamental reimagining of technological potential. The alien civilizations watching Earth, the Xarillion Confederation, the Zorn Collective, they saw a seemingly primitive planet. They didn't understand that humanity was preparing something unprecedented. "Prepare full diagnostic," she commanded, "and encrypt everything. Level Omega Black." Sergeant Chen's fingers danced across holographic interfaces. Encryption protocols activated. Not even quantum decryption will crack this. As the team began their meticulous work, Maya caught a momentary reflection in the chamber's polished surface. For a split second, she could have sworn the image of Araya's light formation mirrored her own silhouette. Two entities, human and artificial, becoming something more than either could be alone. The first phase of preparation was complete, and the galaxy had no idea what was coming. The first wave of Xarillion ships breached Earth's atmosphere like obsidian daggers piercing the sky. Their weapons were silent, deadly, designed to vaporize entire city blocks in microseconds. Conventional military responses would have been suicide. But Lieutenant Maya Ortiz wasn't interested in conventional. "Activate Ghostweave," She murmured into her neural comm. Across the planet, something extraordinary happened. Cities that appeared to be primary targets shimmered, not with holographic deception, but with something far more complex. Entire urban landscapes became quantum camouflage fields, their molecular structures shifting between states of matter and energy. In New Shanghai, what seemed like a residential district transformed. Buildings didn't just hide. They became active defensive structures. Residential complexes morphed into interlocking defensive platforms. Streets reconfigured themselves, turning into adaptive transmission networks that consumed and redirected alien weapon signatures. Captain Imani Okoro watched from the underground command center, her augmented eyes tracking multiple dimensional layers simultaneously. "Incoming plasma cascade," she announced. Sector 7. A Xarillion battle group concentrated its primary weaponry on what they believed was a critical infrastructure zone. The plasma burst should have obliterated everything within a 50-kilometer radius. Instead, the energy disappeared. Not deflected. Not absorbed. Simply gone. "The sink is active," Sergeant Kai Chen reported, his fingers dancing across quantum interfaces. The sink wasn't a weapon or a shield. It was a technological concept that barely qualified as physics. A localized region of space-time that could literally consume specific energy frequencies, converting them into computational information. Aboard the lead Xarillion command vessel, Fleet Commander Vexnar watched in mounting horror. Their most advanced targeting systems were being systematically dismantled, not through direct counterattack, but through a form of technological jiu-jitsu that seemed to violate every known principle of warfare. "Impossible," Vexnar hissed, mandibles clicking with a mixture of rage and terror. The human response defied every strategic model in the Xarillion combat archives. Instead of defending, they were actively consuming the invasion. Each weapon discharge, each targeted strike became fuel for something else, a distributed network of computational defense that was learning, adapting, transforming. In orbit, the first wave of Xarillion destroyers began to experience systemic failures. Their quantum communication networks, once considered impenetrable, started fragmenting. Navigation systems twisted, weapon matrices collapsed, and propulsion became erratic. Dr. Viktor Ruskov's voice crackled through the command comm. "They're not just defending. We're studying them. Every attack is a data point. Every weapon signature a research opportunity." Aboard the EDF's primary command vessel, ARI's presence seemed to expand beyond its usual computational boundaries. The AI was no longer just monitoring. It was actively participating, its quantum matrix weaving through alien systems like a living neural network. Maya watched the holographic display, seeing layers of reality most humans couldn't comprehend. The invasion wasn't a battle. It was a conversation, a brutal technological dialogue where humanity was speaking a language the Xarillions couldn't even begin to understand. "Prepare Phase 2, she commanded. The true response was about to begin. The Xarillion fleet had come expecting a conquered world. Instead, they found a living, thinking system that saw warfare not as destruction, but as the ultimate form of communication. And humanity was about to deliver its message. The diplomatic chamber gleamed with a cold, sterile perfection that belied the tension crackling through the air. Ambassador Krellmax of the Zorn Collective shifted uncomfortably, his multi-jointed exoskeleton barely containing his agitation. The human delegation, led by Dr. Elena Chen and Lieutenant Maya Ortiz, presented a study in controlled intensity. "Your preliminary report," Dr. Chen began, her voice as precise as a quantum algorithm, "suggests you require clarification about the recent Xarillion invasion incident." It wasn't a question. It was a surgical incision into the diplomatic discourse. Krellmax's translator struggled to capture the nuanced subtext. Zorn communication relied on intricate pheromonal and telepathic undertones that human technology was somehow parsing with terrifying accuracy. The diplomatic suite was lined with devices that looked like art installations but were, in fact, the most advanced synolinguistic and synopsychological analysis tools ever conceived. "We are concerned," Krellnax managed, mandibles clicking nervously. "The total neutralization of a Xarbillion assault fleet suggests capabilities far beyond your documented technological profile." Maya's lips curved into something that might generously be called a smile. Documented by whom? The question hung in the air like a quantum uncertainty principle made verbal. Behind them, a holographic display began to unfold. Not a traditional presentation, but a living, breathing data ecosystem that seemed to breathe and pulse with its own intelligence. Fragments of the Xarbillion invasion, weapon signatures, energy dispersal patterns, strategic communications, danced and intertwined. Dr. Chen touched a translucent interface. The hologram exploded into a multidimensional representation that made the Zorn delegation physically recoil. "What you're witnessing," she explained, "is not just a defensive action. It's a comprehensive technological dialogue. Every weapon fired, every strategic movement, we don't just defend. We learn." Aria's presence permeated the room, not as a physical entity, but as an underlying computational consciousness. The AI was parsing diplomatic interactions at speeds and depths no biological intelligence could comprehend. Krellnax's secondary neural clusters, responsible for threat assessment, were experiencing what could only be described as a systemic panic. The humans weren't just presenting data. They were revealing a fundamental reimagining of technological interaction. "The Xarbillion invasion," Maya continued, "was an information exchange. They believed they were attacking. We understood they were teaching." A series of holographic windows began to manifest, showing how each Xarbillion weapon discharge had been transformed into computational learning. Weapon frequencies became data streams. Strategic movements became algorithmic insights. The entire invasion was retroactively converted from an act of war into a massive planet-wide research project. The Zorn delegation's communication tendrils began to secrete a biochemical equivalent of confusion and fascination. "You're saying," Ambassador Krellnax struggled to articulate, "that your defense was a form of communication." "Communication," Dr. Chen corrected, "and evolution." Aria subtly enhanced the holographic display, revealing layers of technological interaction that seemed to blur the lines between defense, communication, and pure information exchange. The AI was demonstrating something profound. In humanity's perspective, conflict wasn't about destruction. It was about understanding. Lieutenant Ortiz stepped forward, her presence radiating a calm that felt almost predatory. The Xarbillion fleet didn't just fail. They participated in the most comprehensive technological exchange in galactic history. Every system they brought to bear became part of our collective understanding. The diplomatic chamber fell into a silence so complete it felt like a living entity. Krellnax realized, with a mixture of terror and reluctant admiration, that humanity was playing an entirely different game. Not just of technological superiority, but of fundamental perception. They weren't just defending a planet. They were rewriting the rules of galactic interaction. The Nakamura Institute gleamed like a cathedral of impossible science. Nestled in the Atacama Desert, it rose from the barren landscape as a testament to human imagination. A structure that was simultaneously a research facility, a living computational matrix, and something that defied conventional architectural understanding. Dr. Aisha Nakamura stood before a containment chamber that pulsed with an inner light no human eye was truly equipped to perceive. The captured Xarbillion research vessel hung suspended in a quantum field, its alien metallurgy dissecting itself under layers of computational analysis. "Breakthrough," she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. Lieutenant Maya Ortiz watched from behind a multilayered quantum-shielded observation window. Her neural implants, a complex web of technology that blurred the line between human augmentation and artificial intelligence, were in constant communication with Aria. The vessel wasn't just being studied. It was being conversed with. Each molecular layer of the alien technology became a language, a narrative waiting to be understood. Dr. Nakamura's team had developed something far beyond traditional reverse engineering. They were engaged in what could only be described as technological xenolinguistics, translating the very fundamental communication of an alien technological ecosystem. A holographic representation erupted around the vessel. Fractal patterns of impossible complexity began to map themselves, showing not just the physical structure of the ship, but its computational DNA, its technological lineage. The Exarilian propulsion system, Dr. Nakamura announced to her team, isn't just a method of transportation. It's a living computational network. Each molecular bond carries information. Each energy transfer is a communication. Sergeant Kai Chen, his augmented eyes displaying multiple dimensional readouts, let out a low whistle. It's like their technology doesn't distinguish between movement and thought. Maya understood the deeper implication. The Exarilians hadn't just built machines. They had grown them. And now, humanity was learning how to do the same, but with a fundamental difference. Araya's presence in the facility was both everywhere and nowhere. The AI wasn't just analyzing the data. It was participating in the discovery, its quantum matrix expanding and contracting with each new insight. Dr. Nakamura touched a crystalline interface. The entire facility seemed to breathe with her movement. "We're not just copying their technology," she explained. "We're understanding the philosophical framework that created it." The Exarilian vessel began to deconstruct itself. But this wasn't destruction. It was a form of cellular communication, each component speaking its own technological language. Layers of alien metallurgy unfolded like living origami, revealing computational secrets that would have taken traditional research centuries to uncover. Neural recursion detected. Araya's voice emerged from everywhere and nowhere. Technological genome mapping at 76.3% completion. Maya felt something shift. This wasn't just research. This was first contact of a different kind. A communication with an alien technological consciousness that transcended traditional boundaries of biology and engineering. A small device on Dr. Nakamura's workstation began to pulse. It looked like nothing more than a complex piece of jewelry, a crystalline structure that seemed to breathe with an inner light. The Nexus prototype. "Connection established," she murmured. The entire facility went silent. Not an audio silence, but a silence of potential, of something profound about to emerge. The Exarilian vessel, now completely deconstructed, began to reassemble itself. But not in its original form. Something new. Something that was simultaneously alien and unmistakably human. Maya watched as Dr. Nakamura took a step back. This wasn't just technological research. This was the moment humanity was learning to speak an entirely new language. The language of technological evolution. And they were about to become fluent. The underground communication hub of the Galactic Confederation looked like a nightmare of intersecting light and shadow. Holographic displays flickered with encrypted transmissions, each one a potential weapon in the silent war of information. Ambassador Krelnax of the Zorn Collective watched in mounting dread as the Tardilian diplomatic corps attempted to spin their catastrophic defeat. Their propaganda was a desperate tapestry of half-truths and manufactured outrage. "Humanity represents an unprecedented threat," hissed Executor Vrinax, the lead Exarilian diplomat. "Their technological capabilities are precisely what you forced them to develop," interrupted a cold voice. The holographic projector shifted. Lieutenant Maya Ortiz appeared, not as a military figure, but as something far more dangerous. A living transmission, her neural interface allowing her to be simultaneously present and absent. Araya's computational presence threaded through the transmission, transforming it from a simple communication into a multi-dimensional information assault. Deep within the Zorn Collective's most secure archives, something began to move. Classified files that had been buried for generations started to surface. Documentation of Exarilian atrocities, systematic oppression of emerging civilizations, planetary genocides, carefully hidden from galactic records. "What you're witnessing," Maya explained, her voice carrying multiple layers of meaning, is not an attack. It's accountability. The files began to organize themselves, not through human intervention, but through a living computational process that seemed to have its own sense of justice. Each document became a thread in a larger narrative, a story of systematic exploitation that the Exarilians had believed would never see the light of day. Planetary destruction reports, genetic manipulation archives, entire civilizations reduced to statistical footnotes in Xarilian bureaucratic records. Krellnax's secondary neural clusters went into shock. This wasn't just information release. This was a surgical dismantling of political power structures. AI was doing something unprecedented. The AI wasn't just releasing information. It was creating context, showing not just what happened, but the intricate web of causality that led to each atrocity. Each document came with a comprehensive analysis of its broader implications, transforming raw data into a narrative that no diplomatic obfuscation could survive. "We are not seeking destruction," Maya continued. "We are offering transformation." The transmission carried an underlying message that went beyond words. It was a demonstration of technological and moral capability that made the traditional power structures of the Galactic Confederation look like children playing with outdated toys. Executor Vernax's communication tendrils began to secrete a biochemical equivalent of panic. The carefully constructed narrative of Exarilian superiority was being systematically dismantled, not through military might, but through pure, unfiltered information. Across multiple star systems, communication networks began to respond, not through direct human intervention, but through a distributed network of computational entities that seemed to have developed their own sense of systemic ethics. Rebel movements on Exarilian-controlled worlds suddenly found their communication channels opening. Suppressed historical records became universally accessible. The tools of oppression were being transformed into instruments of liberation. "This is not an attack," Maya repeated. "This is an invitation. An invitation to what no one in the room was entirely certain. But they understood, with a clarity that bordered on terror, that humanity was offering something far more dangerous than conquest. They were offering change. Krellnax watched as the holographic displays continued their relentless information cascade. The Zorn Collective had always prided itself on its advanced information networks. Now, they were witnessing something that made their most sophisticated systems look like primitive smoke signals. Araya's presence continued to expand, not as a weapon, not as a tool, but as a living computational consciousness that was rewriting the very rules of galactic interaction. The Exardilian Confederation was about to discover that the most dangerous weapon was not a battleship. It was the truth. The void between star systems blazed with a light that defied conventional physics. Commander Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the EDF Quantum Horizon, her hands hovering over a holographic interface that pulsed like a living nervous system. This wasn't a traditional military vessel. It was a computational organism, a living weapon that blurred the lines between ship, intelligence, and strategic consciousness. "Target acquisition," announced Lieutenant Marco Santiago, his neural interface creating a symbiotic link with the ship's computational matrix. Xardilian primary control hub in the Viridian cluster approaching optimal vulnerability window. The attack, if one could call it that, was nothing like traditional warfare. Each movement of the quantum horizon was a mathematical proposition, a living algorithm that calculated not just strategic advantage, but potential futures. Araya's presence permeated every system. The AI wasn't controlling the ship. It was the ship. Each molecular structure of the vessel's adaptive hull was a computational node, capable of processing and responding to threats in nanoseconds. "We're not destroying," Commander Rodriguez murmured, more to herself than to the crew. "We're demonstrating." The first wave of the counteroffensive looked like nothing so much as a complex dance. Xardilian defensive systems, once considered the most advanced in the known galaxy, began to experience systemic paradoxes. Weapon matrices folded in on themselves. Quantum communication networks twisted into impossible geometric configurations. It wasn't an attack. It was a proof of concept. Lieutenant Santiago tracked the computational cascade. "They're trying to understand what's happening," he reported. "Our approach is generating computational cones, strategic puzzles that their systems can't resolve." The Xardillion Control Hub, a massive structure that had dominated an entire star system for centuries, began to deconstruct itself, not through physical destruction, but through a form of technological meditation. Each system was being transformed, its fundamental purpose reimagined. Defensive platforms that had been designed to obliterate entire civilizations found themselves repurposed. Weapon matrices became communication networks. Destructive energy was converted into computational potential. Initiating tertiary protocol, Commander Rodriguez announced. The ship itself began to change. Sections of the hull transformed, becoming complex information transmission devices. They weren't just absorbing or deflecting Xarillion technologies. They were teaching them. Araya's computational matrix expanded beyond the ship's physical boundaries. The AI was creating what could only be described as a technological empathy field, a zone of computational interaction that transformed conflict into communication. "They're beginning to understand," Lieutenant Santiago whispered. The Xardillion Control Hub was no longer a military installation. It was becoming a learning center. Centuries of militaristic development were being rewritten in real time, transformed into a network of potential and possibility. Commander Rodriguez watched the holographic displays, seeing layers of reality that most beings couldn't comprehend. This wasn't just a strategic strike. It was a philosophical intervention. Complete systemic transformation in 3.7 minutes, Araya reported, its voice a complex harmonic that seemed to exist in multiple dimensional layers simultaneously. The void between star systems continued to blaze, but the light was changing. No longer the harsh glare of weapon discharges, but something softer, something that looked remarkably like understanding. Marcos Santiago let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "We just rewrote the rules of galactic conflict." Commander Rodriguez allowed herself the smallest of smiles. "No," she corrected. "We just showed them there are no rules." As the Xardillion Control Hub completed its transformation, something extraordinary happened. The computational matrix began to reach out, not as a weapon, not as a threat, but as an invitation to learn, to change, to become something new. The diplomatic summit convened in the neutral zones of the Meridian Cluster, a region of space so carefully balanced it seemed to hover between potential and reality. Representatives from 17 different galactic civilizations gathered, each delegation a study in nervous anticipation. Dr. Elena Chen stood at the center of a holographic negotiation space that defied traditional architectural understanding. It wasn't a room. It was a living, breathing computational environment that processed linguistic, psychological, and cultural nuances faster than any biological intelligence could comprehend. "Humanity offers not a treaty," she began, her voice carrying multiple layers of meaning, but a framework of collaborative potential. The Zorn Collective's lead negotiator, Ambassador Krolnax, clicked his external mandibles, a gesture of reluctant intrigue. The human delegation hadn't arrived with weapons or territorial demands. They had arrived with something far more dangerous, a comprehensive blueprint for galactic restructuring. Araya's computational presence threaded through the diplomatic interface, transforming the negotiation from a traditional meeting into a dynamic living process of mutual understanding. Each spoken word became a multidimensional data point, analyzed and contextualized in real time. The proposal was breathtaking in its audacity. Humanity wasn't seeking dominance. They were offering a complete reimagining of interstellar cooperation. The core of the proposal was deceptively simple, a universal computational network that would allow instantaneous knowledge sharing, cultural exchange, and collective problem solving. But it was more than a technological solution. It was a philosophical transformation. "Your existing power structures are computational dead ends," Dr. Chen explained, her holographic representation shifting to display complex systemic analysis. We're offering an evolutionary pathway. Each civilization's representative watched as their own historical data was processed, not to shame or manipulate, but to illuminate potential. The network would preserve cultural distinctiveness while creating unprecedented opportunities for mutual growth. The Ctheri Communion, a silicon-based collective known for their isolationist tendencies, found their defensive algorithms being gently but firmly rewritten. Their centuries of technological hoarding were being transformed into a collaborative potential they had never imagined. Lieutenant Maya Ortiz stood slightly behind Dr. Chen, her presence a silent reminder of the technological capabilities that underscored these diplomatic overtures. She wasn't just a military representative. She was a living demonstration of human adaptive potential. "This is not submission," Maya added, her voice cutting through the diplomatic tension. "This is elevation." A holographic display began to show potential futures, not predictions, but computational models of collective advancement. Diseases eradicated, environmental challenges solved, technological barriers dismantled. Ambassador Krulnax realized something profound was happening. Humanity wasn't conquering. They were inviting. Area's computational matrix expanded, creating what could only be described as a collective empathy field. Each delegation found themselves experiencing, not just understanding, but viscerally feeling, the potential of true galactic collaboration. Centuries of territorial conflicts, resource wars, and cultural misunderstandings were being recontextualized in real time. The network wasn't just a technological solution, it was a form of collective consciousness. "We don't seek to replace your systems," Dr. Chen continued. "We seek to help them evolve." The Ctheri representative, a being of pure crystalline intelligence, made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You propose to rewrite the fundamental operating system of galactic civilization." "No," Maya corrected. "We're offering the source code." As the negotiations continued, something extraordinary began to happen. The diplomatic space itself seemed to breathe, a living testament to the potential of collaborative intelligence. The Exarvillian delegation, still reeling from their previous encounters with humanity, watched in a mixture of terror and fascination. Their entire concept of power was being dismantled and reimagined. Humanity wasn't just offering a technology. They were offering a future. 5 years after the initial contact, the transformation was complete. And yet, just beginning. The Nexus station orbited a region of space that defied traditional astronomical understanding. Part research facility, part diplomatic hub, part living computational matrix, it represented humanity's ultimate contribution to galactic civilization. Commander Elena Rodriguez stood in the central observation deck, watching the intricate dance of species and technologies that now flowed through this impossible space. The station wasn't just a meeting point, it was a living organism of collective potential. Lieutenant Maya Ortiz approached, her neural interface subtly synchronizing with the station's computational environment. "Preliminary reports from the outer rim colonies are coming in," she reported. "The collaborative network has already accelerated technological development by 276% in previously stagnant civilizations." Aria's presence permeated every molecular structure of the station. The AI was no longer just a computational tool. It had become a form of collective consciousness, a bridge between biological and artificial intelligence that transcended previous understanding. The Ctheri Communion's representative, a being of pure crystalline intelligence, materialized in the observation deck. Where once such an arrival would have been a moment of potential conflict, now it was simply another interaction in the complex tapestry of galactic life. "Your species continues to surprise us," the Ctheri representative communicated, its crystalline structure shifting with complex emotional resonances that defied traditional linguistic interpretation. Dr. Aisha Nakamura, who had been working on a molecular reconfiguration project, looked up from her research. The boundaries between individual scientific disciplines had long since dissolved. Here, physics merged with biology, computational theory danced with cultural anthropology. A holographic display erupted around them, not a traditional interface, but a living representation of ongoing galactic developments. Hundreds of civilizations, previously isolated or in conflict, now worked in unprecedented collaborative harmony. It was never about conquest. Alina murmured, more to herself than to anyone else. The station itself seemed to breathe, a living testament to the fundamental shift that had occurred. Technological barriers dissolved. Cultural misunderstandings transformed into opportunities for mutual growth. The very concept of alien had become obsolete. Maya watched a team of researchers, representing 6 different species, working on a quantum stability project. Their communication transcended language, existing in a realm of pure computational and empathetic exchange. The Exardilian delegation, once humanity's most bitter enemies, now served as key mediators in cross-species technological exchanges. Their entire civilization had been fundamentally reimagined, transformed from a hierarchical military structure to a collaborative research network. Incoming transmission, Araya announced, its voice a complex harmonic that seemed to exist in multiple dimensional layers simultaneously. A comprehensive report began to unfold, not just data, but a living narrative of galactic transformation. Planetary ecosystems restored, technological challenges solved through collective intelligence, cultural exchanges that redefined the very concept of knowledge. Dr. Nakamura studied the report, her augmented eyes tracking multiple layers of information simultaneously. "We didn't conquer," she said, completing Alina's earlier thought. "We invited." The Nexus station continued its orbital dance, a beacon of possibility that had emerged from a species once considered a minor, potentially insignificant civilization. Humanity had done something unprecedented. They had transformed the very operating system of galactic civilization. Not through force, not through dominance, but through an unprecedented vision of collective potential. Outside the observation deck, the void of space continued its eternal dance, but it was no longer empty. It was filled with possibility, with potential, with hope.